From BLC Studios in Mankato, Minnesota, this is the Maverick Hockey Live Podcast, presented by Dunkin, with your host, Shane Frederick.
Welcome to the Maverick Hockey Live Podcast, presented by Dunkin. My name is Shane Frederick. I'm the host. And today, joining me is Minnesota State Associate Head Coach Todd Knott.
Thanks for having me on, Freddie.
It's great to have you here. Yeah, it has been a while.
You get the rink every other day.
I know. I miss being there every other day. Today felt like a day with all the snow and everything. Today felt like a day I should be hanging out at the rink.
Yesterday, it's coming.
Well, it's good to have you here. It's obviously been a good start to the season for you guys. We've had a lot of players on and players after big weekends, and that's been a lot of fun. But it's good to have a member of the coaching staff here to talk a little bit about how the season's going so far as you head into one more weekend before you go into break. How would you assess the first half of the season for the Mavericks?
You know what? It was a really good start, as you talked about, especially with the schedule we had. We were concerned as a coaching staff, as much as that, hey, UMass had UMass, and you get excited. When the week hit, we're like, what are we doing right now? And credit to our guys. And at that point in the season, you don't know what you have, no matter what happens a year before, until you start playing with live ammo and watching the new players come in, and even the veteran guys, the steps they take or don't take. And we got off to a very good start. And the positivity with those couple weekends, I thought, led into league play with those first 6 games. And I believe we started with Northern at home, caught them at a decent time. I think they were still figuring out their team.
Yeah.
And that's part of college hockey, is when you catch teams. But all in all, very good. And specifically, I would say our decor.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing I would probably bring up, is we defend really well. I think there's an honesty to us that way. And I just don't want to say the decor, the team. Mm-hmm. As a team, we defend. And you get Drydo in the net making the stops he needs to make. But it's as deep of a decor as we've had. And we've never, ever played, very seldom we dress 7. Which makes it a little bit tougher when you're running those D. Usually it was pretty simple throwing a couple guys over, but this year, and credit to those guys, it's been spacing 7 guys out and everyone's playing.
Yeah, I look at this weekend, this past weekend, you're coming off a 5-point weekend. I was going to say a sweep, technically a sweep with 2 wins, but 5 points against Michigan Tech. One of the tougher teams you're going to face in conference play. And I was under the weather and I had to watch from the comfort of my home on TV. But, watching those 2 games, very defensive games, almost very playoff-like, goals are hard to come by. You have a couple big plays that kind of make the difference, whether it's Dryden's save with 20 seconds left on Friday night that leads to overtime, or a timely play where Ryan Sandlin, cashes in on a turnover early in the second period. And did you feel like that series was, you talked about your decor, but that was a weekend where you needed your decor to be really good, because Michigan Tech's was too.
They are, and every time we play them, I would say specifically over the last 3 years, Joe Sean does a really good job, and they're actually 2 very similar teams in terms of structure. The way they support pucks, the way they break out pucks and defend within a swarm, and they've got a lot of bodies that you got to get through. Similar philosophies, I think, and we actually talked to their staff about it after the weekend and felt it was playoff hockey. And you're right, that time of year, it's a timely goal, a timely save, as simple as that. You're fighting for 60-plus minutes sometimes, and you need a bounce. I thought our guys played hard on Friday. I thought we took a step actually on Saturday and played a little bit better on Saturday. But again, give them credit. I think the Bliss line with Perentino, Hallinan, that's one of the better lines we've seen. And even doing the pre-scout on them, that's going to be a team that wins a lot of hockey games. They're not going anywhere. If they can find a way to muster up a few more goals, and again, that's what we probably, the defending part of it, I don't know if we gave up a goal 5 on, we gave up a shorty, and then a power play goal on Saturday. So we didn't give up a 5-on-5 goal all weekend. And that's something we've got to keep with our team, and they're buying into right now, as you talked about, more of a defensive game. But you got to win games different ways. And there's some nights that we've been able to put up 5-6, and there's others that one's going to have to hold up, or a 2-1 hockey game. And I don't think that'll be any different playing Bemidji State this weekend.
Yeah, that was a good test, especially I think the third period on Saturday. You don't get outshot with the lead very often. You don't get outshot in games very often. That was a game where you were outshot, I think, for the first time this season. It was 20-19. And you give up 9 shots on goal in the third period. Win a lot of games, and you look at there's been a lot of discussion when Dryden McKay gets a shutout because it looks like the third period, oftentimes he barely sees a shot. Your guys are so good in those situations. But this was one when, Tech put a little more pressure on you guys, and you had to preserve that slim lead, and you were able to do it. That's probably was a good test for you guys.
It was, and it's good experiences for everybody, but a guy like even Bennett Zamolik, that's probably the most minutes he's played in a very impactful game, and really like the way he responded. And the more minutes you can get guys in those situations bode well for playoff hockey once you get into the most important times in March and hopefully April down the stretch. And he was one guy I thought took a step.
Interesting, too, that as much as you guys have scored goals and not given up much this year, it still ended up being a weekend where you really relied on your top line with Nathan Smith and Julian Napravnik and Cade Borchert. They seemed like they were the difference maybe in the weekend overall against that team, and especially you look at a guy like Nathan Smith who factored into 4 goals, all 3 on Saturday.
They have, and you look at the way he played over the course of the weekend, and I know Julian like a couple of those back on Friday night, and I thought 8 was playing real well. 15 just getting back from an illness. Mm-hmm. I thought he was a little off because of that, but if you watch that back, Nathan Smith could easily add another 3-4 points on the weekend on plays he made to him and a couple empty nets that were missed, or
right.
Goalie making a good save. But Nathan has been that way all season, and credit to him. That's the biggest step I think he's taken from last year's consistency. Mm-hmm. If you look, and again, we'll go back to the start of the season at UMass when we're down 3-0 on a Saturday night, or actually it was a Sunday. We're down and out a little bit, and all of a sudden at the end of the second period, scores 1. Start of the third period, he scores a second one, that short side bar down, and all of a sudden our team's believing. And so not only the impact he has on the game individually, but I get to watch it every day in practice, and that affects your whole team.
Sure.
When you have someone that can make a special play and make a difference one-on-one, it's a huge impact for your whole group of 20 guys. Even within that game, it lifts everybody up confidence-wise. And I thought he did that again this weekend.
Yeah, I had to do a little mini blog post for the Rink Live where they asked everyone who covers a team, who the most improved player is on that team. And I decided to go outside the box a little bit. And I said, believe it or not, I think it's Nathan Smith. And, yes, he was preseason player of the year and had an incredible end of the year last year. But I just think that his ability to kind of take over games and maybe have that confidence to do that, where I don't know if that was the case last year, and certainly wasn't as a freshman. When you watch a player kind of transform themselves into a real on-ice leader, star player, whatever you want to call him, you can really see it with him.
You hit it on the head with last year. What people remember is the end of the season.
Yeah.
Loveland, the regional, and how well he played. He played a very good game in the Frozen Four, but prior to that, it was up and down, and he would be the first one to come in here and say, I was okay last year. There were good moments, but it wasn't very consistent. Put it together at the end of the year, which I thought was huge for him, feeling good coming into this year. But he's been able to do that every weekend now. And it's just been fun to watch because, again, the credit goes to the kid and his commitment. He's always been committed with his body in the weight room. He's a specimen that way. He treats his body the way he eats, the way he drinks. And now it was really just mentally getting through the grind of 2 games on a weekend. And, Coach always talks about it. Can he play 18, 20 minutes on a Friday and do the same thing again Saturday?
Right.
And sometimes that's not as much physical as it is mental. And he's showing that he's getting better and better with that.
You go up to Bemidji State this weekend, in-state rival, always a grind. They're playing pretty good hockey right now. How do you see them right now? How do you see that matchup going into this weekend?
You know what? I don't want to compare them to Tech because they're a different team, but we've really looked at this as a staff, as a 4-game stretch. We've talked about it a lot the last 3 weeks, where we've got 4 playoff-like games because we've got enough history. They've got enough.
Right.
They've got enough veteran players on their team. We've got enough on our team to know what it's like to play at Bemidji State. And I don't care what time of year that is, what's on the line. And a lot of time it is just because of when we play them. At the end of seasons, there's a lot of times championships on the line. And so our guys know what to expect this weekend, and then it's going to be, again, 60-plus minutes of grinded out hockey. They've got a very veteran-laden team right now, as we do. So we'll just roll it out and throw it out there as they will.
You played at Bemidji State. What's it like? I mean, you've been here for a long time now, but certainly, do you have different feelings when you go up there as a coach, when you go up to the place where you played hockey?
It always means a little bit more. And Tom was my coach.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say recruited me there, but he was definitely my coach for a couple of years. There's a transition year in between, but it definitely does. He's someone that I still lean on every job that I've ever taken. Tom has been part of that decision. He was very good to me when I played there, and he's even been better to me as a coach now. So those series I've got a mom and dad, brother, sister that are still in the area, sister-in-law. So you get more family around it, and you get the big war with the family of Beaver fans and Maverick fans. And that's kind of split sometimes. So it always makes it a little bit more interesting.
You played there. Your brother played there too, right?
He did.
The two of you played together.
He's got twin boys. And crazy enough, I got to watch what I say in case it gets back to Beaverland. But they're Maverick fans. He's got twin boys that are probably about 10 years old right now. Terrible, I don't know that. But they're Maverick nuts, and I absolutely love it.
That's awesome.
Crazy. Again, it gets to be a little bit of a battle because it's my brother's been in that community a long time, and again, that's his alma mater. And so I understand if he can't be flying a Maverick flag when I come to town.
Oh, it's always one of my favorite trips when I would cover you guys regularly and go up there. It's a fun place to watch a game at the Sanford Center. Obviously, you didn't play there, but you played the John Glass. Yeah. And I remember the tiny press box of the John Glass Fieldhouse. In fact, I assume that I saw you score a goal against the Mavericks way back because I was going back and looking at box scores at one time or another, but it racked my brain and see if I can remember exactly tall drink of water out there scoring a goal.
I got a couple actually. Mavericks came to town. I want to say it was home opener. Tom's first year as head coach, and we actually beat him with the shootout first night. It was like 6-5, 7-6.
Yeah, I think 7-6.
One of those games, and then 5-2 we got beat, and I got one at the tail end of the game that didn't mean a whole lot, but it padded my stats a little bit. So I got this 5-2 late in the third period.
That's all right. Yeah, there were some battles even back then, and going back and you're right. Tom Serratori, he's one of the great characters of college hockey. I always think the people who follow WCHA and now CCHA, obviously Frank, his brother, gets a lot of the credit as being maybe the biggest character in all of college hockey, and deservedly so. But you got to throw Tommy in there too, because he has been great to deal with, and he can tell a story, and he can. He might not have the woe is me Vikings highlights that his brother has, but
you know what?
It's still pretty great.
He's been incredible for Beaver hockey when you look at what he's done. And I played for R.H. Peters too, and I mean, him and Brosey went head to head. When we talked Maverick, Beavers, and when Tom took over, a lot of people forget about how much he did fighting one to get in the league, right? And it started with the WCHA, then the rink. And then all of a sudden the WCHA's not the WCHA. And that was a hard moment to go through because all the fighting he did to get to that point. And so he's done and accomplished not just the wins and losses, going to a Frozen Four with Bemidji, but that rink standing there, the leagues that they've been fighting to be in. That's a lot because of Tom Serratori.
Yeah, and he seems to have a history with everybody. Obviously, he has a history with Coach Hastings, and going back to St. Cloud State, and just some great. It's great how intertwined college hockey can be that way. I'm sure you kind of see it even from the periphery a little bit about who knows who, and then now you've been in it long enough where you're in that. I'm sure the same is with other assistants and other associate coaches, and 25 years from now, we'll be talking about you guys the same way, probably, right?
It's such a small hockey world, and I always giggle with Coach Hastings. I can't walk in a rink, and I mean high school, junior. There's going to be someone to grab me at some point and either say, "Hey, he coached me," or it was a friend that he was coached by, and that's his 14 years in Omaha in the USHL. Yeah. Now college hockey for another 10 years as a head coach, and I know there's probably another 5 years or so, and there's a assistant at Minnesota and UNO, but he's just touched so many people in the coaching world that way. And again, it's a very small world.
What's that been like for you? You've been with him now in the 10th season. were at Minnesota State for how many years before that? Or
3 years.
3 years
So
before
I
that?
think this is 13.
This is year
year.
13. Wow.
I know.
How time flies. I think I remember meeting you over at Taylor Center when you got hired to do a
Good
story.
memory. I was just going to say it was Taylor Center.
Yeah, it was.
I still remember on the walk around our own campus, and I
Yep.
stopped in at that where Shane Drahota, who's still here,
Yep.
Kevin Beisman. That's a little bit what's special is how many people are still around.
Yeah, I remember meeting you that day, doing a little story about the new guy replacing Eric Means, and so many people have been such staples for so long. Like you mentioned, the athletic department, the hockey program was kind of that way too. So when there's been change, and this year there's been some, with Darren Blue stepping down after some 21 years, it's kind of just always strange to see when it's a little bit different. But being in your situation now, 13 years is a real staple. What's that been like for you? What's that growth been like? And, both in, how you've worked within the program and how you've worked with Coach Hastings?
You know what? First of all, my family, it's been incredible. That's been the part, I think, when you talk 13 years, when I first made the move here, that was the first thing I asked Coach Judding is, how long do you plan on being here? Because I moved from, a couple of moves within because we had Bailey, my oldest daughter right now, and we had a 1-bedroom apartment in Des Moines when we first had her. Making it work, being a coach, you just had to do that. So we had to move into a 2-bedroom within Des Moines. Then that was Fargo to Des Moines to Sioux City to Mankato. And it just got to be a lot. And I thought, I just want to be somewhere and lay some roots, one, professionally, but also for my wife and kids. My wife, Angie, God bless her heart, on making those moves and running around different apartments. And so that's been incredible for my daughter. And we talked about it actually yesterday on being around this long, her now in 9th grade, coming as a 3-year-old. They've called Mankato home. My son, that's where he was born. And now my youngest, Allie. So it's been incredible for me that way. And the relationship with Coach Hastings, it's just evolved in a very positive way. And I can say he's an incredible human being, not just professionally. The best part that for me has been getting to know him on a personal level. He's an incredible coach, but he's a better person. I think that's what makes him go. And so our relationship from when I was very fearful probably in my first couple of years, and not that I'm not now, but I think you grow up a little bit and I understand what his expectations are, and I better be able to recruit very good student athletes here.
Right.
When you're first working under that, it's very stressful and very, those first couple of years were extremely hard. But I needed to go through that professionally. And so he helped me grow up that way. At some point, I'd love to have my own program. It's not a immediate need now. I enjoy where I'm at. I love being with the Mavericks, and under his, I'm an assistant coach, and Paul Kirtland's fitting great. Had a lot of good years with Darren Blue.
Yeah.
We still text multiple times today, so that doesn't go away. He's still in town. And so I've been extremely fortunate in my years there's not many assistant coaches. When you talk Darren, 21 years, that's incredible.
Right.
But even 13 years, you don't see a lot of assistant coaches in one place that long.
And that was what was kind of amazing. I remember, 3 or 4 years ago, the incredible run the Mavericks have been on since Mike Hastings was hired. And every year people talk about just the sheer number of victories, and that you guys have been able to maintain that number one spot and most victories since whatever year. So, since 2012, when Hasty was hired. But for a long time, up until this year, I would look at the coaching staff and I would look around the rest of college hockey and see how many 3-person coaching staffs have been together as long as you guys have. And there really weren't too many others. I think there were a couple, and then maybe someone changed up, and it's just a rarity, whether it's somebody deciding to leave as Darren did this year, if somebody going to another program, maybe someone going from a second assistant to a top assistant at a program, or someone taking over and becoming a head coach. The turnover seems to happen a lot, and that consistency that you guys have had for as long as you did, is rare. And just as a little bit of an outside observer, seeing your relationship, the three of you, it seemed like it was a pretty special one that you guys had in terms of the way you worked together, and to keep that program where it was.
Well, you bring up the 3 of us, and I'm going to even go a step further because you're right on with the continuity of a staff. Let's add Tom Incrott now, who was here when I first stepped in. So that's 13 straight years.
Your strength coach.
Coach. And now let's go Scotty Rideout, who was here when I first got here, equipment, 13 years. He was here, I think, 1 year prior, so 14 years. Right. Let's go Paul Allen. Let's go Sully. You're talking guys that you start adding up those years, and go back to a year ago with Bluey, but there were, that's 75 years when you start adding up all the guys that have been around. And now Matt Schmidt, our athletic trainer. Yes. He's now been a staple and been around. And to your point, there are things that I think comfortable is the wrong word, but you just get used to that. Mm-hmm. And you kind of forget and don't realize how important that is on the same message from Coach Hastings down on when you have people that have been part of it that long and part of success. I just think that culture is really important, that piece of having people that understand it, the good times and the bad times. Yep. And I hope I'm not missing anybody right now. But it's in you, for many, many years. Sure. The same guys you see, but it is in interviews that you're doing. And are you poking? Are you what kind of work you're doing within the team? Right. Positively or negatively. Yeah. And everyone kind of gets a relationship where it gets to be a well-oiled machine, and that starts with Coach Hastings. But I think that's been incredible and a great point by you. And it's not just the three coaches. Yeah, that's interesting. And then now you have Luke's been around for a few years as your Regner. I'll even go President Davenport at the time and now Inch. But then you have Kevin Beisman as athletic director, Tim Marshall. All these people have been around for a long time, and I think that's an important piece to it when you're having success as a program.
It's interesting that and then you bring in someone, you mentioned Paul and how he's fitting in right away. Because change is different, change is hard. But what it's did you have advice for him right away? How do you bring in someone like that? And because they want to be their own person to some degree and coach their certain way, but they have expectations to live up to and certain responsibilities that come from Coach Hastings on down.
That's what we loved about Paul from day one, is he's got his own opinion. He does, and I say that in a positive way. Through the process, and it's not like, and this is where Coach was smart about hiring, it's not like he was my best buddy. Yeah. Wasn't his best buddy. This was what's best for the program professionally, and part of that goes with being a good human being, and we knew that checked off from the time that we've spent with them and the background check that we did. But that's what I've enjoyed most about Paul. He's comfortable in his own skin. To come in and handle that, of taking over for a guy like Darren Blue, and being around me and Coach, which can probably be a little bit daunting at times just because we've been together for 10 years. So those relationships are a little bit different. He's fit in unbelievable. From day one, recruiting with our guys, I can tell you that the guys on the team, just being around him and watching that interaction, the guys really like him, and that's a huge piece of it. Now we're going to continue to develop the being on the road, and as you know, as I say, Coach Hastings, we're a lot better coaches with good players. We've got to continue to bring in good student athletes, and that's going to be the number one priority here moving forward.
As a recruiting coordinator for this team for a long time, as the program has gotten better, has improved, has consistently been a top 10, top 5, this week number 1 ranked team, going to the Frozen Four last year. Does that make recruiting easier, harder? How's recruiting changed for you over that time?
Great way to put it. Easier, harder. Are you relevant with more kids? Yes. So in that aspect, there's no question. Specifically, if you get into Canada, Minnesota kids kind of know what's going on. You grow up loving college hockey, but now all of a sudden, and I always talk about the story when I first got into recruiting in BC, Alberta, and talk about Minnesota State with kids within the WCHA at that time, and I would get a call back on, hey, I love Minnesota. And half those kids were talking with the Gophers. And it's just like, you know what? Do I bring up state here? And they just wanted to play Minnesota. They took that as one team, really. And now, of course, Bemidji State, Duluth, what they've been doing, St. Cloud, everyone's got their own identity now. But without a doubt, you're relevant with more kids because of a Frozen Four. I felt that piece especially. Mm-hmm. But where it becomes more difficult then again is you really don't want to sway from your identity, your philosophy as a recruiter, what's made us successful. And I'll even go back to Kevin Snedden at Vermont. And when he was at Vermont, they went on a Frozen Four run. And it wasn't directly from him to me, but I did some dig work on teams that had success and then maybe took a step back. And he just talked about when you say more difficult, the worst thing that happened to them is all of a sudden they were more relevant with certain kids. More calls from advisors on, hey, Vermont's a place to play. How about this kid? And they changed their philosophy in recruiting. A 19, 20-year-old kid went a little bit younger, and that hurt them. And that was coming right from his mouth again. That just hurt our program at that time. And going to that Frozen Four hurt them. So you got to be careful with it. I love that we've had success. I just think our identity, and again, our philosophy is recruiting. You always have to evolve, but just be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you become more relevant, and that probably makes you eager to kind of test those waters. But can you do it somewhat within the philosophy that's made you successful over this time? Whether it's
Correct.
Being able to nurture relationships, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but we've talked enough where I feel like you're able to nurture relationships, be honest with players, telling them that you're going to play an extra year of junior hockey, develop there so that they're ready for a position to play right away here, whatever it might be. Easier said than done as that talent pool expands, or as your recruiting board expands, if you want to call it that.
Correct. And I think the one thing that we have going for us that helps us right now is Coach Hastings in those meetings with families. When you are talking junior hockey and we believe in experience, well, we have a lot of stories now to tell. Now that we've been together 10 years, and I don't care if that's a Jake Tremko and Nathan Smith who got drafted, that played one extra year at junior and now is playing one extra year. And his story's still not done, but early on this year, it's sure looking like that's a pretty good choice for that kid,
right,
on the success he's having, because it's not about, coach's philosophy. It's not about a cup of coffee. Are you ready to be a pro when you step in? Because then it's for real and it's business-like. Either you're ready or you get sent down.
Right.
And he always talks about, a bit of invincibility and putting as many eggs in your basket as you can so you can survive like a David Bax did for so many years. And whether that's playing as a penalty killer, Teddy Bluger,
yep,
right? You can play wing, can play center, you can be on a power play if needed, can play up your lineup, down your lineup, can kill penalties. And I think those are the things he pushes with the Nathan Smith and other guys. And that goes back to that start of the relationship in junior hockey that, there's not many guys that look and say, I wish I would have, not played that extra year of junior hockey. I haven't heard that, but I have heard, God, if I would have been more patient, specifically with my first year here of Adam Mueller. I can bring up a lot of guys that looked at me and said, why wouldn't I have played more junior hockey? And they regretted it. So I take those experiences also with recruiting and use those stories.
And it's harder, I suppose, that convincing, you have to find different ways to tell that story too, because as we've talked about, I talked about this with Cade Borchert last week, when you talk about someone who isn't playing a lot, or whether it's in junior hockey, whether it's in college hockey, that patience factor can be difficult. The transfer portal, the getting an advisor involved, whatever it might be, probably becomes more tempting unless you're in a situation with a relationship to be honest with someone about either here's what you have to do, or here's why you have to be patient, or here's why you need to play another year here because we don't want you to be on the bench for a year, whatever it might be. I just assume that patience factor gets a little bit more difficult as we further ourselves down the line with players.
And communication is number one when you bring up talking to players about it. I think that's very healthy. Because it is the portal, when you bring up advisors, it's getting really, and right or wrong, agree with it, disagree with it, it's here.
Yep.
It's not going away. And so we have to deal with that right now. And again, I'll pump Coach's tires on that. I think he's an incredible communicator. I think just having open lines and not just communicating, but being really honest and having hard conversations. It might be really difficult right now it might be this group of 3 guys, but this is what we lose. This is where it's going to be a year from now. So your job is to continue to get better and better. And if you don't have those conversations, I just think it's lazy as a coach, as our staff. And as a kid, if you don't feel value, if you're out of the lineup, you still have to feel part of it.
Right.
You're part of the program just like everybody. And coach's big phrase is we're going to need everyone. He talks about that at the beginning of the year and what happens when we go to Lake State, right? That happens. It's right in front of our face. It's like I told you guys, at some point, we will need every single guy on this team and probably multiple times. And that hit us within the first half of the season. All of a sudden, we got 6 guys out for sickness.
Right. And you're going to a tough place to play on the road. And, I remember I was homesick, and I got the tweet with your lineup, and I went, whoa, what's this? And I'm sure you guys were doing the same thing, and you knew who was on the bus.
2 different teams. Even within practice, it was a different world, and give guys credit that dressed up specifically in that Saturday game to find a way. Because there were not only a different lineup, there were guys playing that were not feeling real well, and find a way to get 3 points.
Feeling more healthy now going up to Bemidji?
We are. Knock on wood. That piece, I think I still felt Friday. And again, for whatever reason, whether I never want to blame it on that, because again, they're going through the same things. Yep. You talk to Tech, talk to Ferris, I don't care who it is. Everyone's going through illness right now. Right. You're just hopefully staying away from the COVID, but if it's not COVID, you're getting the flu.
Right.
You're getting colds. And so you're fighting through that right now. And right now, we going into this weekend, we should be pretty healthy.
Excellent. Well, best of luck against the Beavers, and see if you can close out the first half of the season strong.
Awesome. Merry Christmas to you, Freddie.
Same to you, Todd, and your family, and thanks a lot. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening to the Maverick Hockey Live podcast presented by Dunkin. We're going to take a couple-week break for the holidays till the Mavericks come back when they'll play UMD, I believe, right after break. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.